friends. Today we are here to discuss the topic relating to succession under Muslim law. In this particular topic, we are going to deal with the schools of Muslim law, sources of Muslim law, succession under Sunni law, doctrine of awl and doctrine of Rad, succession under Shia law, the comparison between Sunni and Shia law, the female's right to inheritance, significance, and conclusion. This particular topic will be dealt in two different parts. So now when we are discussing about Muslim law, first of all we need to understand who is a Muslim. Muslim is a person who believes in one God and that Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is his prophet. Then when we speak about succession, it relates to the procedure by which one person comes under another as in relation or lineage. When we speak about inheritance or the laws relating to inheritance, they are provided in three places in Quran, that is in Surah Nisa. In that particular surah, 3 times the inheritance laws are discussed. Indian Succession Act 1925 is not applicable to Muslims as they are governed by the personal laws according to freedom of religion guaranteed under Article 25 to 28 of the Indian Constitution. There are different rules of succession under Muslim law for different schools of thought. Basically, the death of a person brings about the procedure relating to transfer of most of his rights to the persons who are called as their legal heirs and representatives. There are two schools of Muslim law, that is Sunni and Shia. The Sunni school of law is having further 4 different sects or 4 different schools of thoughts, that is Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki and Humli. These 4 are based on the imams which the people follow. There are 4 different sources of Muslim law. The first one is Quran, which is the divine source. It is revealed by the God to the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The second source which is important is Sunnah. That means the things which Prophet himself followed. Next, the third source is called as Ijma. Ijma refers to the consensus amongst the Muslim jurists on a particular legal issue. It constitutes the third source under Muslim law. The next source is called as Qiyā. Qiyā here represents the Muslim scholars' view when they interpret the Quran and the Sunnah. That particular interpretation comes to or is called as Qiyā. So these are the 4 basic sources of Muslim law. From the guidance of these sources, the right to property or inheritance or succession of Muslim law follows. The succession under Muslim law is of 2 types. First one is non-testamentary, second one is intestate succession. That means when a person or the deceased leaves a will behind, and in case if he does not leaves a will behind, then in these 2 circumstances different laws will follow. Now let us discuss the rules of succession under Muslim law. First of all, there is no distinction between the types of property under Mohammedan law. That is, the property may either be movable or immovable. It can either be corporeal or incorporeal. In both the senses, the rules of succession will be same. In case of death of a person, every such property which was within the ambit of ownership of the deceased person shall come to or shall become the subject matter of inheritance among the heirs. The amount of property which shall be subject to or which is the subject matter of inheritance is made available to legal heirs to inherit, and it shall be determined after making certain appropriations, such as if the deceased has paid certain amounts or certain amount of money which he had borrowed from someone, if the expenses are spent on his funeral, if there are any legacies, wills, etc. After all these payments are made, then after that, whatever property is left behind, that particular property is referred as inheritable property. Each and every property that remains within the ownership of an individual is to be inherited by the successor of the deceased. When a Muslim dies, all his property, whether it is acquired by himself during his lifetime or whether he inherited it from his ancestors by or through his legal heirs. The question of property's inheritance under Mohammedan law comes only after the death of the person. There are three different classes of sharers under Sunni school of thought. That is, sharers, residuaries, that is agnates, and distant kindred, that are cognates. What are these? We will deal with it in detail in the upcoming slides. Now let us have a look at sharers. When we speak about sharers, they are 12 in numbers. That is, the four males, father, grandfather, brother and husband. They are the four different category of male sharers. When it comes to females, the number of sharers is double that of males. That is, wife, daughter, son's daughter, mother, grandmother, full sister, consignee sister, that is half sister of father's side, and uterine sister, that is half sister of mother's side. The next class is that of residuaries. If the deceased has left behind sons and daughters, then the daughters cease to be sharers and become residuaries instead. And when we speak about distant kindred, they are the people who are related with the deceased from uterine blood relationships. Besides the above classes of sharers, residuaries and distant kindred, there is one subsidiary clause. According to this particular clause, besides the above mentioned three classes of heirs, there are four more categories of legal heirs. And they are called as subsidiary heirs, and they inherit, but only in exceptional cases, not in normal cases, such as if the person is successor by contract, if the person has acknowledged as a kinsman, if there is universal legatee, and the state through the process of escheat. After ascertaining the shares, the representative shares which are already fixed for them is allotted to each of the category of sharers, residuaries or distant kindreds. If the whole property exhausts after the distribution of shares among each of them, the process of distribution does not proceed further. But in case, if after the distribution of property among all the three classes, the property remains, then the second step is to distribute the remaining property among residuaries who constitute as second class of heirs. I would like to make a correction that if the property is distributed among sharers and then the property exhausts, then distribution will not proceed. But after the distribution of property among sharers, if still the property remains, then the residuaries are entitled to inherit. In case if there are no sharers of the deceased, then the complete property will be inherited directly by the residuaries. If the deceased neither has the sharers nor the residuaries, then the third instance, the property will be distributed among the distant kindred, that is the blood relationship of uterine blood relation. The distant kindreds are not entitled to inherit in presence of any higher belonging to the class of sharers or residuaries. If there are no sharers or no residuaries, then only the distant kindred can become the heirs. The property inherited by the successor by contract, if any, and in absence of acknowledged kinsman, if there be, and in his absence too, it is inherited by the universal legatee, if there is such a legatee under any will left by the deceased. If there is none among the above mentioned classes of heirs, the properties of the deceased are ultimately inherited by the state. State is the ultimate heir of every such property. When a deceased Muslim has no legal heir under Muslim law, the properties are inherited by the government, and this particular process is called as escheat. The practical allotment of respective shares to each legal heir is not as simple as it appears from the scheme of distribution stated above. There are different rules and exceptions when the distribution is made, and that is why it becomes difficult. For example, there are certain rules of exclusion under which one heir of the same class may be excluded by the presence of same or other. In certain cases, an heir may not be totally excluded, but his share may be reduced in presence of other heirs. Moreover, in some cases, an heir may inherit in double capacity, that is, if father is a sharer, but in certain cases, he inherits also as a residuary. As per the Quran, there are 6 fractions of shares, that is, 2/3, half, 1/4, 1/8, 1/3, and 1/6. When we speak about 2/3 number of shares, that is, in case if there are 2 or more daughters of the deceased, for 2 or more sons' daughters, for 2 or more sisters, for 2 or more half sisters. In all these 4 cases, the fraction of shares will be divided on the basis of 2/3 number of fraction. In case of 1/3 share, for 2 or more mothers' children, for the mother in the absence of child or son's child, or 2 or more brothers or sisters, sometimes for the grandfather when there are brothers and sisters, then the fraction of share will be 1/3. Half share is allotted for one of the 4 sets of females mentioned above when she is alone. For the husband, when his wife leaves, no issue. Then in these cases, half share will be allotted. The 1/4 share or fraction is for the husband when the wife leaves children. For the wife, when the husband leaves no children. Then in these cases, the husband and wife will inherit 1/4 in case one of the spouses is deceased. Then 1/8 share is for the wife when her husband leaves children. So this is how the fraction of shares are divided. The 1/6 fraction of share is for the father when the deceased leaves children, for the grandfather, for the mother when the deceased leaves children or 2 or more brothers and sisters, for the grandmother when the deceased leaves children or 2 or more brothers and sisters, for the son's daughter when the deceased has one daughter, for 1 or more half sisters when there is a sister of 2 or more mothers, for 2 or mothers' children. When a father and spouse are alive after assigning the respective shares due to them, and 1/3 of the remainder will be assigned to the mother. The proportion assigned to the wife has to be shared equally by 2, 3, or 4 wives if they coexist. To make it simple, I have made tables which will make it easy to understand the distribution of shares among the sharers. The first class of sharer will be the father of the deceased. He will be entitled to 1/6 of if the deceased leaves son or son's son or lineal male descendant. In case if there is true grandfather, then he too will be considered as a sharer, and his share will be 1/6 of the share of father. Then, in case if there are uterine brothers, then 1/6 when only one and no child or child of son, father, true grandfather is there. When two or more uterine brothers are there, 1/3 share will be given to each of them. If husband is the sharer, then half of the share will go to him. But in case if the wife leaves behind child or son of a child, then the husband's share will be 1/4. In case the son is the sharer, then half of the property will devolve to him when no child or son's daughter is there. In case if there are more than one son, then 2/3 share will go to each. When existing with daughter, then the son's share will come to 1/6. As far as distribution of shares relating to females is concerned, if the sharer is a widow of the deceased, then 1/4 of the property will go to her. But when there is no child, then in that case, 1/8 of the property will go to the widow. In case the sharer is daughter, then half of the property will go to that particular daughter in case if there is only daughter and no son. But if there are more than one daughters, then the property instead of half will be distributed as the fraction of 2/3 among both the daughters. In case if mother is the sharer of the deceased, then in that particular case 1/6 of the property will go to her when the mother is coexisting with sons and daughters of the deceased. In case if there are no son or daughter of the deceased, then instead of 1/6, 1/3 property will be inherited by the mother. If there is grandmother, then her share will be 1/6. If there are full sisters of the deceased, then in that case half. And in case there are more than one full sisters, then 2/3. If more, that in no absence of other legal heirs. In case of consignee sisters, then half of the property will devolve to them, but only when there is one and no one else. And then if there is full sister as well as consignee sister, then 1/6 will go to the consignee sister. If there are two or more and no excluder, then the property of the consignee sister which she will be entitled to will be 1/3. In case of uterine sisters, the share will be 1/6 of the property left by the deceased. There are 5 primary heirs, that is, the living spouse, the son, the daughter, mother, and father. In case these 5 or any one amongst them is not there, then the next category which comes will be of residuary. That is, they are the residue after such primary sharers or legal heirs inherit the property. If the share is satisfied, then the remaining property will devolve to the residuaries. That is, they are again classified into 3 different classes. Residuary in their own right, that is male relation, father, father's father, son, or that is patrilineal lineage. Residuary in another's rights, that is females who are sharers who coexist with brothers, and residuary together with another residuary. The third class, that is distant kindred, is also called as cognates, that is uterine relation shares, which do not fall in the category of sharers or agnates. They inherit only if there are no sharers or residuaries as present. So, as far as agnates and cognates are concerned, agnates relate to the relation from father's side and cognates relate to the relation from mother's side. Class 2 hires, also called as residuaries. Who are they? When a proprietus has no sharer at all, then the whole property is inherited by the residuaries. If there are sharers, but after giving them the property, still the property remains, then the residuaries are entitled to the distribution of that property. In certain combination, the sharers themselves are treated as residuaries. For example, daughter with son, sister together with brother, a father without children of the proprietus is treated as a residuary. It is significant to note that residuary heirs have no fixed shares. Their share depends upon the property left as residue and it may vary from case to case. There is no uniformity in the share of the residuary. They may be free from among the descendants, ascendants, or collaterals. Distant kindred, that is class 3 hires. In the absence of sharers and residuaries, the properties devolved among the distant kindred or the uterine hires of the proprietus. The exception to this general rule is that if the only hires are husband or widow and the distant kindred, then the distant kindred get the residuary after allotment of share to the husband or widow. In normal circumstances, they are excluded by sharers and residuaries. But in exceptional circumstances, they are entitled to inherit together, that is, in case of husband of the deceased or in case of widow of the deceased. The distant kindred too are further classified into 4 different classes in order of priority. That is, the first class are called as descendants of the proprietus other than sharers and residuaries. That is, daughters, children and their descendants. Children of son's daughter, how low soever and their descendants. The class 2 of distant kindred refers to ascendants of parents of proprietus other than sharers and residuaries. That is, false grandfather, how high soever. False grandmother, how high soever. The third class of distant kindreds are the descendants of the parents of proprietus other than sharers and residuaries. The fourth class is descendants of ascendants how high soever other than residuaries. This class includes descendants of immediate grandparents, that is true or false, and descendant of remoter ancestor how high soever, irrespective whether he is true or false. Let us have a look at distribution with an example. If a Sunni Muslim dies leaving behind his father, father's father, mother, mother's mother, 2 daughters and son's daughter, the allotment of the respective shares will be as under. Father will be entitled to 1/6 of the share because there are children, that is daughters. Father's father will be excluded because father is getting his share. Mother will be entitled to 1/6 because the deceased is having his own children. Mother's mother will be excluded because there are 2 daughters or deceased children of the deceased. Son's daughter will be excluded by two daughters. Now in this case, after allotting the sum total of share, that is 1/6, 1/6 plus 2/3, that will be 6/6, and equal distribution of the property will be done. 1/6 of father, 1/6 of mother, and 2/3, 2/3 for two daughters. So that accounts to 6/6. Thus, the total property is completely exhausted. In such case, only the sharers will be entitled to. Now, the sum total of shares given to the heirs also come out to be 1. Therefore, there is neither loss, less, neither excess of the sharers. Now, let us discuss the doctrine of all and doctrine of Radd. After adding all the shares, if the fraction is, say, x by y, then the numerator x denotes the number of shares, whereas the denominator y denotes the fraction of pieces of the property. If x and y both are equal, then the property is exactly distributed. The result is sum total of respective shares become unity. But in certain other cases, the similar situation may not be there. Either the sharers are in excess of property or the property is in excess of sharers. In such case, the doctrine of all, that is increase, or doctrine of Radd, that is decrease, as the case may be applied for distribution of property in order to make the sum total of shares unity. Doctrine of all, that is increase. After allotment of respective shares to sharers, if the sum total exceeds unity, the doctrine of all is applied. If the aggregate of share is 13/12, then 13 represents the number of shares and 12 represents the fragments of piece of property. In such case, the number of sharers exceed the number of fragments of property. So the fragment of pieces of property are less than the number of sharers. Then in this case, the distribution of shares among legal heirs, two things must be taken into consideration. That is, the sum total must come out to be unity. Secondly, the representative shares cannot be changed because they are specified in Quran itself. Therefore, in order to make unity without changing the respective shares, the fragment of property is increased by adopting the doctrine of all. Keeping the numerator intact, the denominator is decreased in such a manner that denominator, that is total number of fragments of property, becomes equal to the numerator. Instead of altering the shares, which are of divine origin, the pieces of property are enhanced, which makes the shares in unity. That is, the property presumed to be one exhaust without affecting the sharers. That is, in case if the aggregate is 13/12, then denominator is short by 1. So by adding 1 to the denominator, it becomes equal. Similarly, if the aggregate is 15 and denominator is 13, we have to add 2 to make it equal to the numerator. Next doctrine is called as doctrine of Radd. When the sum total of shares is less than unity, the doctrine of return is applicable. If the sum of all the sharers come out to be less than unity, it implies that number of shares is less than the number of fragments of property. For example, if the number of sharers is 12 and the fraction of property, if the number of sharers is 5 and the fraction of property is 12, this means their sharers are 5, whereas the inheritable property is 12. In these circumstances, even after allotting the respective shares to the sharers, still there remains some property. And in case if there are no residuaries or other distant kindred or heirs to get the residue, then in such cases, doctrine of return, that is Radd, will be applicable. When the property is excess to the number of shares, it is returned back and is added to the respective shares of the legal heirs in proportion to their shares. This right of reverted is technically called as return or Radd. What is the difference between all and Radd? In case of all, that is increase, the total number of shares add up to more than unity, whereas in return, the total number of shares falls of unity. In increase, the shares undergo relatable reduction. In return, the shares undergo relatable increase. In increase, the share of husband or wife suffers a proportionate reduction along with other sharers. In return, the husband of wife is or wife is not entitled to the return so long as they are in their any other legal heirs where sharer or distant kindred. Now, let us see the succession under Shia school of law. In Shia school, there are three different schools of thought, that is, Ismailiyas, Ithna Ashariyas, and Zaydis. As per Shia law of inheritance, there are only two classes, that is, sharers and residuaries. The sharer's shares is divided as if the husband is the sharer, he will inherit 1/4. If father is the sharer, he will inherit 1/6. If uterine brothers are there, they will inherit 1/6. The residuaries are entitled to only after the satisfaction of shares of the sharer. Whatever residue is left is distributed among heirs not mentioned in the category of sharers, that is paternal, maternal, uncle, aunt, etc. In Shias also, males and females both are entitled to be the sharers. The share of wife in case of deceased husband will be 1/8. The share of mother will be 1/6. The share of daughter will be half. The share of uterine sisters will be 1/6. The share of full sisters will be half, and that of consignee sisters will be either half or 2/3, depending upon the number of sisters. If we look into the scheme of distribution of property among Sunni and Shia, we find a major difference. That is, as per Sunni law, the distribution is on the basis of per capita, that is, equal distribution among heirs. Whereas in case of Shia, the distribution is per strip, that is, the property is distributed according to the strip to which they belong. There is certain difference relating to succession under Sunni law as well as Shia law. If we look into Sunni law, we find that there are three classes of sharers, whereas in case of Shia law, there are only two classes. In case of Sunni law, there is distinction between paternal as well as maternal grandfather, but no such distinction is there in Shia law. In case of Sunni law, if the deceased leaves behind daughter and grandson, both will get half. Whereas in case of Shia law, daughter will have entire share to nearer degree. In case of Sunni, schools exclude share of deceased brother or sister in presence of grandfather. Whereas in case of Shia law, the grandfather, the brother, the sister, all are categorized in the same class. In case of Sunni law, agnates will be entitled to share but not cognates. In case of Shia, both agnates as well as cognates receive equal shares. In case of Sunni law, grandson will inherit from the estate of grandparent as per capita, that is 1/3. But in case of Shia law, because the distribution is per strip, each son and his legal heirs, that is, grandsons individually, are not qualified as heirs. Now, let us have a look at Muslim women's right to property. There are many misconceptions about rights of Muslim women, that they are not entitled to inherit property, they are not having the right to divorce, etc. But after studying Muslim personal law, all these confusions or misunderstandings are done away. What are the rights of female? As per Quran, Allah says, men receive a share of what their parents and relatives leave, and women receive a share of what their parents and relatives leave, be it little or much, a legal share. This is said in the Quran in Surah Nisa. There is no distinction between the rights of men and women. On death of ancestor, both become legal heirs of inheritable property. However, the quantum of share of female hire is half that of the male hires, and the reason is that because she is entitled to inherit from mother's side as well as husband's side. As far as widows are concerned, they too are not excluded from succession. A childless Muslim woman is entitled to 1/4 of the property of the deceased husband. A widow who has children or grandchildren is entitled to 1/8 of the deceased husband's property. Muslim men, if the Muslim man marries during an illness and subsequently dies of that medical condition without brief recovery or consummation of marriage, then in this particular circumstances, his widow will not have right to inheritance because the marriage was not consummated. If the ailing husband divorces her and afterward dies from that illness, then the widow's right to share of inheritance continues until she remarries. Significance of inheritance in Islam. Inheritance is a special feature of Islam. The protection of right of natural inheritors is protected. There is fair sharing of wealth among both the genders. The right to property of women, it was given in modern day times by the so-called civilized world only after the beginning of 20th century, that women in America, England and Western countries gained the right to property. But as per Mohammedan law, since the inception of Islam, women or females are entitled to inherit property. The circulation of wealth is undertaken by Allah Himself in Surah Nisa. Though after detailed analysis or study, many people still find it difficult how to distribute because the number of sharers, residuaries, distant kindred may differ from case to case. In these circumstances, it becomes very difficult to classify the number of shares or distribute the property. So with the advent of technology, an Islamic inheritance app has been developed in which Islamic inheritance calculator is there. With the help of this calculator, the number of sharers, the distribution of inheritance, etc. can be easily done. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and share.